Hi guys, so I'm going to record the lecture for today since I won't be able to be with you guys. It is 6.1 rationales for imperialism. But before I do that, I just want to show you guys what the daily question would be. So if you haven't completed the daily question, make sure you complete it. It shows this super cool political cartoon about imperialism. I want you to answer these questions. Who do the people on the left represent? Who do the people on the right represent? And what do you think is the message of this political cartoon? So once you answer that, then you're going to go over to your OneNote. Remember, always using that to take notes in class. Go over to your name. We'll just see Anaya. Click on the class notes. And then 6.1 rationales for imperialism should be right there. This is what they look like. Not too long today. And once you have that open and ready to go, we're going to go ahead and get started with the PowerPoint. So 6.1 rationales for imperialism. This is our new unit called Consequences of Industrialization, but I'm going to always call this unit Imperialism because that's what it's really about. And our time period is the same as Unit 5, 1750 to 1900. So let's go ahead and get started. Our learning objective for today is explain how ideologies contributed to the development of imperialism from 1750 to 1900. So which spice tea theme are we focusing on for this chapter? Keywords to note here are ideologies. So the spice tea theme is going to be cultural. So make sure you write cultural on your OneNote for the spice tea theme we're going to focus on today. So since we're focusing on cultural, we're going to be looking at different ideas that contributed to imperialism, how religion factored into it, basically all that stuff. So just to give you an overview of this chapter, we're going to be looking at all of these different parts of the world where Europeans were establishing their new empires. We've got Russia represented by the bear. The US is right here, and if you notice, there's like a little shadow, like a faint Uncle Sam in Latin America, which we'll learn about more later, but just keep that in mind that we have all of these different European powers, Russia, the British, the French, a lot of different European powers going out and conquering Africa, the Middle East, and China, and also India. India is always important. But that is basically what this whole unit is about, how these different European countries and non-European countries are going out and establishing their overseas empires. So I am calling this unit Imperialism. Let's get a definition of imperialism in here. So imperialism basically means establishing overseas empire. Imperialism refers to empire, so that's how you can remember it. If you speak Spanish, imperialism sounds like imperio. Imperio means empire. Just to remember that. Imperialism just means establishing empires. Now, to start off this chapter, the textbook gives you this poem called The White Man's Burden by Kipling from 1899. And this basically establishes a justification for imperialism. So the poem says, take up the white man's burden. That's like the duty of the white man. Send forth the best ye breed. So send forth all of your best people. Go bind your sons to exile. So go abroad. to serve your captives' need. So to captives refers to the people that they are going to colonize. To wait in heavy harness. So a harness is like what you put on your pets to, keep them from, it's like a leash to keep them from wandering off. On fluttered folk and wild, your new caught, sullen peoples, half devil and half child. So what Kipling means by using all of these different words is that it is the job of the white people, of the white man, to civilize and educate non-whites by colonizing them. So basically, he's saying us Europeans, us white people, we've got we're just so much better than the non-white people that it is our job to go around the world and tell these non-white people how good the white people are, because that's our job, that's our burden. We got to do it. And by doing that, we need to go out and establish some colonies, colonize people. So that is what he means when he wrote this poem. And this is these ideas are going to be used to justify colonization. So we've got three different motives for colonization. The first one is a nationalist motive. So this is mostly political. It can also be cultural and intellectual, but we're going to categorize it as political. So we've got this term nationalism that we've seen before. Remember, nationalism is this intense loyalty to your country. It's like patriotism, but like extreme patriotism. And you also have a loyalty to others who share a similar language, culture, religion to you. So loyalty to people who share the same nation as you. So the late 1800s, we're going to see the creation of new nation states. Germany and Italy were our big ones because they were unified, but the United States also, they had their revolution. They created their own nation state. Britain and France and Russia, mostly Britain and France, kind of rebranded themselves as nation states. France, especially after the Napoleonic Wars, and then Russia is also going to focus on its Russianness to unite people under one common identity. So that's what happened in the late 1800s. And one of the ways that you show that you are like such a great nation is to assert power over the different territories that you govern. And we can see that in this map here, especially with Russia. It has Finland and Sweden as kind of its dogs, so it's like asserting power over its territories. And that just proves that you are like the greatest of all time. And this ties into nationalism, that immense pride that you feel for your country and that loyalty for your country. So this map kind of shows all of the different nation states in Europe at this point. So let's start with Great Britain, and I put quotation marks around great because they only called themselves Great Britain. Everyone else called them Britain. So after Britain lost the Americas, the American colonies, the United States, they were kind of embarrassed after that loss, so they're going to go look to new lands to colonize. So in 1788, they had their little colony in New South Wales, which eventually turns into Australia, and we can see this is represented in this children's book about the ABCs of Britain. C is for colonies. Rightly we boast that all of the great nations, Great Britain has most, and this is Australia. You can see the kangaroo here, and this is the British man, and then this is the colonized peoples, kind of serving the white man's burden. So Britain is slowly going to take control of India through the British East India Company. We've mentioned that time and time again. You should know British East India Company by now. They're going to have complete control of it by 1857. And then they're also going to have control of other territories like Ceylon, which is modern-day Sri Lanka, Burma, which is modern-day Myanmar, and the Malay states, which include Singapore and then Borneo. They're also going to have control of them. So you can see their empire is growing. And then in the next chapter, we're going to talk about how they got Africa. France has control of Algeria, which is in North Africa, New Caledonia, which is in South Pacific, Senegal, which is in West Africa, and then Indochina, which is in Southeast Asia, and this includes Vietnam. It actually includes Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, which we'll talk about in the next chapter. This is just a brief overview of all of the colonies that these powers have. And then this is a banknote of the Bank of Indochina, and you can see it's in French, and it shows what's going on in the colonies. We're going to have mostly workers farming in these colonies, and then they're going to produce rubber later on, but not yet. So that's France. Then Italy and Germany, since they had just unified, they're not really entering the empire game at this point. They were kind of a little late to the party, but they did want to establish overseas colonies. They didn't do so until like the late 1800s. Spain, if you remember, back in 1450 to 1750, they were like the leaders in imperialism, them and the Portuguese. They had all of that land in the New World with Brazil for Portugal and then like Mexico and Latin America for Spain. But because of the revolutions that we saw in the previous chapter, they had lost all of that land. So their power is going to diminish. And they're not going to be such big players. The main player of the game in this unit is going to be Great Britain. And we've got a newcomer to the imperial game. It's going to be Japan. Remember, they modernized in the last chapter, so they industrialized. They got all these new weapons. They reformed their army, their school system, and they are ready to expand outward. So they're going to try to take Korea. And this is going to bother China because Korea has traditionally been a protectorate or like a tributary state of China, and this is going to cause the Sino-Japanese War. So Sino always refers to China. So Sino-Japanese War is the war between China and Japan, and it's going to be mostly over control of Korea. And this is a painting that shows the Japanese perspective. As you can see, the Japanese are in black, and they're like beating those Chinese, those Qing soldiers, and they're winning because they're the best. So as a result of this war, Japan won and got control of Korea. It doesn't become an official colony until 1910. And they also got control of Formosa, which is modern-day Taiwan. So we can see Japan came in late in the game, but they are slowly taking in some territory. And that's really important because this is going to start World War II. Cultural and religious motives. So this is going to fall under the cultural theme. So colonized people are going to be referred to as children, and then the colonizers are going to be referred to as their benevolent protectors that are on a civilizing mission. So they are on a mission to educate these children. They're not invaders. They're not invading these lands like Africa and Asia. They're protectors. They're trying to protect the people. So racism, this type of racism that these colonizers are seeing themselves as better and superior to their colonized peoples, is going to be very prevalent in this time period. So here we've got a little political cartoon of this is an African person and this is a person from Asia, and they say learning civilized ways is hard work. So this colonial official is like, I'm civilizing you, but it's gonna be seen as another type of slavery. So just like what the Spanish and the Portuguese did with the indigenous people in the Americas, they're going to do a similar thing in this new wave of imperialism. So we're going to see science being used in a very misleading way. So pseudoscientists, pseudo means fake, and you know what scientist means. So fake scientists are going to claim that they have proof that non-whites are inferior to whites. So we're going to have phrenologists, who are people who study skull sizes and shapes. They're going to claim that because Africans and Asians and indigenous peoples have smaller skull sizes than whites, they're genetically and biologically inferior to whites. So they're going to use that to justify imperialism. We're also going to see Charles Darwin pop up, but he's not going to have any say in imperialism. So Darwin is the scientist that came up with the theory of evolution by natural selection. He says that he didn't say it's the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the species that is most adaptive. If you've paid attention in your biology class, you know what Darwin came up with. So people are going to take Darwin's ideas and then morph it into something called social Darwinism. So this is going to apply his theory of natural selection to society, and it's going to say that survival of the fittest, and because European and Americans and whites have they spread their technology and their ideas all over the world, that proves that they are the fittest and therefore they're biologically superior to these non-whites. So they're going to equate technological superiority as natural biological superiority. So these are some of the ideologies that are going to contribute to the development of imperialism. So colonial powers are going to impose their own culture on the people of their colonies. A lot of times they're going to combine people from various cultures into one colony. We can see that based on all of these different divisions, tribal divisions in Africa. The red lines represent the colonies that Europeans established. So they're smushing a bunch of people that have different cultures, different customs, different languages, smushing them into one colony. Europeans are going to try to introduce a new language like French, like Portuguese, like English, to try to unify these different cultures. So this is very evident in countries today like Algeria. The main language is French because it was a French colony. South Africa, the main language is English, but also Afrikaans, and that has Dutch influence. But we can see all of these different influences of imperialism on the countries in Mozambique, and what was the other one? Mozambique, the main language is Portuguese because it was colonized by the Portuguese. So we're going to see that in modern day African countries. Religion was a big part of this new wave of colonization. So just like we had Catholic missionaries like the Jesuits come into Latin America and Brazil to convert the native population, we're also going to see that happen in this new wave of imperialism in places like Asia and Africa. So Christian missionaries are going to want to civilize these non-Christian colonized peoples, and they're often going to combine their religious efforts with humanitarian efforts. So they're going to do things like set up schools, which is going to cause students to become some of them become teachers, some of them become lawyers, some of them become missionaries themselves. They're also going to provide medical care. One example of this is Dr. David Livingstone. So this is this guy right here. He's going to be from Scotland. He's going to work in sub-Saharan Africa to end the illegal slave trade, and he's going to be a missionary. So missionaries are going to try to convert the native population. That's kind of a bad thing because they're trying to make them take away their indigenous beliefs, but they also helped out with some humanitarian efforts, so positives and negatives. But taking in all of those nationalists and cult ideologies, religious motives, a lot of people believe that these things were just used to justify economic motives. In the end, it's all about profits, it's all about money. So, in order to maximize profits, money, we had British, French, and Dutch companies sign commercial treaties with rulers in India, Africa, Southeast Asia. And in those treaties, they're going to give Europeans the right to establish trading posts and forts. And also, we're going to see lots of these companies that the British, French, and Dutch are going to set up. They're going to raise armies and try to conquer territory to form colonies. So let's see some examples of that. The Industrial Revolution, going back to the economic motives. The Industrial Revolution, we talked about that in the last unit, causes this desire for raw materials like rubber, like oil, like diamonds, like sugar, to produce stuff. And then when we produce that stuff, those manufactured goods, it's going to require us to seek out new markets to sell those goods to. So because we can make stuff faster and more efficiently and in greater quantities, greater amounts, that's going to cause us to look for more stuff to make the stuff and then more people to sell that stuff to. So this is also going to motivate that imperial expansion. So imperial powers are going to go ahead and compete with each other for low wage, otherwise known as cheap labor, access to these markets, to places to sell their stuff, and control of natural resources. So we see that in this political cartoon. Lots of political cartoons for this time period. I love it. We see Germany is grabbing parts of Africa. We see the British also trying to grab parts and the Russians trying to grab parts. This isn't the only European powers, but it just shows you how they're all trying to get different stuff and they're competing with each other. So going back to examples of how these imperial powers established control over these different parts of the world. Let's start with the British East India Company. We mentioned these before, so you should be familiar with the term. British East India Company was granted a royal charter in 1600, giving it a monopoly on England's trade with India. So the British are going to push the Portuguese out of India. They're going to trade in silk, cotton, indigo, and spices. They're going to eventually expand to East Asia, where they're going to illegally export opium to China in exchange for tea, and that's going to start the Opium Wars. And they're also going to engage in the slave trade. So the British start out in India through the East India Company, and then the British government is going to get control of the East India Company, and that's how the British government in India becomes a colony of Great Britain. The Dutch do a similar thing. The Dutch, they have a difference between the British and the Dutch. The Dutch were more interested in just making money. The British were interested in like controlling the population just more than the Dutch were. So the Dutch East India Company, remember the Dutch government gave it a monopoly on trade between Southern Africa right here and South America like over there. So they have basically a trade for the Dutch government in the Pacific Ocean. So they're mostly going to be concentrated in islands around the Java right here, which is a modern day Indonesia, and they're replacing the Portuguese in this trade. So the Dutch government, after finding out that the Dutch East India Company was a little corrupt, they're going to take control of the colony, call it the Dutch East Indies, which is modern day Indonesia. So as a result of all of these motivations, we're going to see this new type of imperialism emerge during this time period. Remember, Great Britain is going to be the major player in the game. They're leading in colonies. They have the most, and they're going to have the most land by the end of this time period. Our colonies are going to provide raw materials to make stuff and then markets to sell that stuff to. So after the second industrial revolution, other countries are going to look to Asia, Africa, and the Pacific to expand their empires. So this is going to be the industrial revolution really was that impactful that it caused this new wave of imperialism. That's why this unit is called Consequences of Industrialization. So that's it for today. Your homework is to read and take notes on the next chapter. This one is really long. It's packed full of content, so I advise you to pay attention. I want you also to answer an imperialism SAQ on the hub, and I'll show you what that looks like. Also, we have a new folder, Unit 6, got the textbook readings, got the reading guides, the vocab. No vocab yet because we haven't had a lecture. And there we go, Imperialism SAQ. So I'll show you what that looks like. We've got a speech from a French colonial officer, and then the SAQ regarding that speech. So the SAQs are: describe one motive Ferry offers for imperial expansion other than an economic motive, explain one way in which Ferry's argument is similar to other arguments of the time period, and explain one economic motivation behind European imperialism. So you should be able to do it. Use your textbook, use your knowledge. And make sure you know your vocab word for next time, because next time we will see each other in class and I will get to ask you for your vocab words. So just make sure you know that. That is it. So make sure you do your stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.